Okay, everyone. Today we're going to start talking about leadership. So right now we're going to be talking about some of the myths of leadership, what leadership is, and what leaders do in this lecture. Well, there are people. There are a lot who would say that leadership is a mystery, that it may be hard to define. But there is some research on leadership that gives us at least some answers here. But there are some myths that are discussed in the textbook that we should talk about. One myth is that leadership is power. It's one expression of power, but it's a different kind of power. It's not necessarily the leader does not necessarily have power over the people. It's rather the power to have the group be successful, to have so in other words, it's a power to perhaps energize the group, to make the group more powerful, but not necessarily the leader having power over the group, as that is what defines leadership. There are differences of opinion as far as whether leadership is an inborn trait or whether leadership can be learned, but the evidence says that leadership can be learned. Think about this for a moment. You are all here taking this course, and when you're in college, one of the things that we as instructors want to do is to affect change in our students. We want you to be different at the end of the course and at the end of your time at college than you were at the beginning. So one of the things that I believe that we're supposed to train you in is improving your leadership skills. I think that as college graduates, you will, you should have some leadership ability that differs from people who are not college graduates. So that's the idea, is that we want to be able to build your leadership skills to make you better leaders. I think that there are some things that you do in college that allows you to do that. All groups, not all groups have leaders. Some do and some don't. It depends a lot on the type of task that the group is doing. If it's a very simple task that the group is doing, very routine, you don't really need to have a leader. If everybody knows what they're doing and everybody's doing it, you don't necessarily have to have a leader in that kind of group. If we're dealing with a very complex task that involves a lot of group interaction, that one person can't do it alone, that involves coordination among the different members of the group, perhaps different individuals taking different tasks, then really it would work better if that group had a leader. So certain characteristics of the task, certain characteristics of the group would suggest that there's that would make leadership more likely to occur. People generally don't resist leaders. In fact, in most groups, the people who are following the leader, are quite satisfied in that role, and that they want to have a leader, and they want to have some direction that a leader perhaps could provide. So having a leadership can be actually very comforting, and therefore, it's not a general rule that people would resist leaders. We're going to talk a little bit later about, what makes a good follower, which is a very interesting discussion of leadership kind of turned around. Leaders, I don't know if you can say they make or break groups, but they certainly can influence groups for the positive as well as for the negative. So leadership is very important in terms of being able to provide influence. However, it doesn't really make all the difference. The idea of the romance of leadership kind of makes leadership, kind of exaggerated how important they are. Certainly, leaders are important, and good leaders are very important. but it's certainly not the only thing that is necessary for a group to be successful. So what is leadership? This is a really reasonably good definition of leadership. Guidance of others in their pursuits, often by organizing, directing, coordinating, supporting, and motivating their efforts. Now really this is just one definition of leadership. There are many different definitions of leadership depending on the type of, the theoretical perspective on what's important about leadership. Okay? But here are some characteristics of leadership. Leadership is reciprocal. You can't have a leader without a follower. So in other words, you need to have good followership. You need to be able to have people who are in the group who are kind of on the same page as the leader, who kind of have a shared vision, who want to kind of go in a particular direction. And you need to have that back and forth relationship between the leader and the group. So it's reciprocal. It certainly can't be just a one-way relationship. Another way to look at leadership is transactional. The idea of a transactional leader is a leader who will provide guidance and will administer rewards to the group in order if the group does the kinds of behaviors that the leader wants the group to do. So it's a back and forth, kind of a social exchange. I will, if I will provide support for you, I will give you the time you need and the resources you need to do the task that I ask you to do if you work on the task and do it effectively. If you don't work on the task and if you don't do it effectively, then I'm not going to provide you those resources. So again, it's that social exchange. I'll do this for you if you do this for me. And groups can be very effective in that kind of a relationship. If you're thinking about an employer and her employees, and the employer rewards the employees with money, and in return for the money, the employees do what the employer wants. In terms of in the operation of the business. So that's clearly transactional. I'll do this for you, you do this for me. On the other hand, there's a special kind of leadership called transformational leadership. With transformational leadership, it's not simply just that basic transaction here we're talking about. With transformational leadership, the leader, one of the important goals of the leader is to affect change in the group members, to affect change in the people who are being led in terms of the followers. So a transformational leadership is creating change in the people. So in other words, a transformational leader energizes the people who are working for that leader. They motivate them. They get the people who are following the leader to be really focused on the goal-oriented. So a transformational leadership is affecting change in the people who are in the group, who are being led. And that's a very different idea than just simply transaction. You're creating change in the people themselves. We're going to talk in another lecture. We're going to talk about servant leadership, which is a kind of leadership that is emphasized here at Our Lady of the Lake College, and we'll talk about that specific type of leadership and how it fits in with the college here. But we'll save that for another lecture. Leadership. It should be cooperative. There should be a cooperative relationship between the leader and the group members. If the group members are, you don't want to have a kind of a competition between the leader and the group. It would be, the group would not be very productive. There should be, again, a shared goals that the leaders and the group members have, and they should be working together on that goal. The leader provides support for the people in the group, and therefore helping them to achieve the goal. Leadership needs to be adaptive. They're in changing circumstances. The leadership needs to be able to change as well. There are going to be people who leave the group, people who are new to the group, and they need to be adjusted into the group. So leaders need to be ready for dealing with these kinds of changes. And it should be, again, as we were talking about, goal seeking. So the idea is that, when you're leading a group, the group has a goal, and let's always be looking at how are we progressing toward that goal. So always looking for feedback, progress reports. Let's see where we are. Let's see if we are heading on the path toward our goal, or if we're veering off the path. And these are the kinds of things that leaders can be deeply involved in. One particular way of categorizing leaders is to kind of divide them up into two basic categories: task leaders and relationship leaders. And we've talked about this before when we've talked about task interaction and relationship interaction. It's pretty much the same. Task leadership, the leaders are focused on getting the task done. Their main focus is on trying to get people to be productive, to finish the task that they need to do. They are supportive of the group in terms of providing them what they need for the task. And that is essentially the focus of task leaders. It's like, how is what you're doing leading to the success of the group? And that is essentially what task leaders are all about. Relationship leaders are more about trying to essentially make sure that the relationships between the group members is good and mutually supportive. It's a matter of creating a positive, emotional, social environment in the group. Less focused on getting the task done, but more focused on is the group work well together? Do they like each other? Is there a sense that the leader is a supportive person, that the people can come to the leader with problems, and the leader will listen and be supportive and care about the people in the group? And this is about relationship leadership. Now, in reality, leaders are often a combination of both, but clearly there are some leaders who are much more on the task focused, and others who are much more relationship focused. The Leader Behavior Description Questionnaire excuse me, is a measure that looks at task leadership versus relational leadership, and seeing how they can be related to different variables. One striking difference here you can see with satisfaction with the leader. Followers, the group members who are following the leader, seem to be much more satisfied with a relationship-oriented leader, which kind of makes sense. The relationship-oriented leader is going to be liked more. They're going to be concerned about the group members. A task leader might be perceived as not really caring about the group, just caring about the task that needs to get done. You'd like the leader to care about you too. So that probably is and also job satisfaction too. Is that there seems to be a significant difference between task leaders and relationship leaders in job satisfaction. The relationship leaders engender greater job satisfaction. Again, they like going to work. They like working with this particular leader. So you might have had leaders, for example, employers, managers, and whatnot that you've dealt with that were likable people, approachable and stuff. And so maybe those would be more relationship-oriented leaders. You might have had a task leader who was just focused on the bottom line, just focused on the task that needs to be done. And maybe that person might be perceived as cold, for example, and not really caring, and therefore, you might like that leader less. You might respect the leader that in believing that the leader is effective, but you may not like him that much. So what do leaders do? One of the interesting things is that there are characteristics of the group, the tasks, and whatnot that might make leadership less necessary, or that the leadership substitutes theory suggests that there could be certain aspects of the group, the situation, and whatnot that could be that could substitute for leadership. Okay. For example, let's say the group has a great deal of ability, experience, training, and knowledge in terms of a task that needs to get done. So this group is assigned to do a particular task. They all know what they're doing. They all have a lot of experience. If everybody in the group kind of knows what they're doing, you don't necessarily have to have a leader in that case. They're all just going to get to work and do it, and nobody needs to be watching over their shoulders. And that indicates that essentially can substitute for leadership, because having those skills, those abilities, whatever, make leadership less necessary. What if the group wants to be independent? What if they see themselves as professionals? They know what they're doing. They take pride in themselves being professionals. They're not waiting for a leader to tell them what to do. They know what they're going to do, and they're just going to do it. They don't need to have any kind of group rewards. They just know that they're going to do their job and do a good job, and they don't need to get a pat on the back from anybody else. What about the task itself? If it is a routine task that doesn't really change much, there's not much adaptiveness that needs to be dealt with, not much change, and the task itself will essentially let you know if you're doing it right, well, then in those cases you don't really need to have a leader, because the task itself may be self-explanatory, and you go in, you do the task, and that's that. And you don't necessarily have to have a leader, again, watching you over your shoulder. Furthermore, if the task is intrinsically satisfying, if this is a task that you really like to do, no one's going to have to twist your arm for you to do something you really like. You're just going to get in there and do it. So you can see how these group characteristics and task characteristics can substitute for leadership, where leadership is less necessary. Finally, certain characteristics of the organization might make leadership less necessary. If it's very formalized, if everybody knows the responsibility they have, if everybody knows the goal, they may not need to have a leader tell them what it is if everybody already knows it. There may be certain kinds of procedures that are standard and not going to be changing. Then the kind of group can just go along with that. If you have advisory positions that can help people, support people, again, they don't necessarily need to have a leader for the group. If the group itself is very cohesive and close-knit, they don't necessarily have to have a leader. They're all pulling together. They're all pulling for each other. So they don't necessarily need to find someone who's going to do it for them. Because one of the things the leader might do is try to pull the group together. Well, if the group is already pulled together, they don't necessarily need a leader to do that. Maybe the organization provides bonuses or something for you for however many pieces you sell or something like that. And in that case, you don't need to have a leader to tell, hey, you better sell. Because the leader isn't the one paying you the commission. The organization is paying you the commission. You're going to do whatever you can to make sell as many pieces. And the leader, you don't have to have the leader watching over your shoulder, telling you how to do it, telling you what to do. Finally, there may be characteristics where the leader is nowhere in sight. You've got a work group that may be on site and doing a particular activity, and the leader may be back at the office. You can think about it like a work crew, something like that, that might go and do some work on construction or doing some kind of a home installation or something like that. The boss may be back at the office, but not on the job, and therefore the group can work together without worrying about what the superior says. Okay, some of these leadership substitutes neutralize task leadership, and some others neutralize relationship leadership. So here are the ones that kind of neutralize task leadership. And remember, what task leadership is kind of pushing people to get on task and work towards doing what you need to be doing, the task you need to do. Well, for example, if everybody in the group has the ability, experience, training, and knowledge, they don't need a leader telling them what to do. If you're a professional and you know what to do, you don't have to have the leader behind, looking over your shoulder. You know what you're doing. Leave me be to do my work. So that would be the task leadership. On the other hand, certain characteristics of the group neutralize relationship leader. If you have a very close-knit, cohesive group where everybody likes each other, you really need to have a relationship leader that is going to be kind of, consoling everybody and, making everybody feel better. They already feel good. They don't need to have the touchy-feely stuff. They already have a good relationship with each other. If the task is intrinsically satisfying, you don't need to have any touchy-feely stuff at all. You're enjoying doing the task itself. So, you don't need to have any of that touchy-feely stuff in those kind of circumstances. So again, these are just some examples of how these substances can take over for either task or relationship leadership. There is a tendency, but certainly not true for everybody, that men tend to be more task-oriented and women more relationship-oriented when it comes to leadership. Again, it is only a tendency, but it does happen. And again, think about the task leaders. They assign tasks. They may be providing constructive criticism. They're seeing that the group is working to its full capacity, that kind of thing, and they're coordinating the activity of the group. The relationship leaders more listening to the group members, being approachable, treating group members as equals rather than as subordinates. And again, they are more in line with making the connections with the people. But again, at times maybe you need to have a little bit of both, depending on the circumstances.